The rain hammered against the windows of Rosie's diner like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry. It was 11:30 on a Tuesday night in Newark, New Jersey, and the kind of cold that seeps through your coat and settles in your bones had driven most people indoors hours ago. Inside the diner, the fluorescent lights buzzed with that tired hum that comes from bulbs that should have been replaced months ago. Sabrina Miles moved between the empty tables with practiced efficiency, her sneakers squeaking softly against the checkered linoleum floor. At 26, she had the kind of beauty that exhaustion tried to hide, but couldn't quite erase. Dark eyes that still held flickers of ambition, high cheekbones that caught the harsh light, and hands that trembled slightly from too much coffee and too little sleep. Her apron was stained with ketchup and regret, her name tag slightly crooked, pinned just above her heart. The diner smelled like stale coffee, fried onions, and broken dreams. It was the kind of place where truckers stopped at 3 in the morning, where lonely salesmen ate apple pie in silence, where waitresses like Sabrina worked double shifts to cover rent that was already 2 weeks late. The walls were decorated with faded photographs of Newark from the 1950s, when the city still believed in itself, when factories hummed with promise and families gathered on stoops in the summer heat. Sabrina wiped down table 7 for the 3rd time, her mind elsewhere. She was thinking about the eviction notice taped to her apartment door, about her mother's medical bills piling up in Philadelphia, about the nursing degree she'd started 5 years ago and never finished. She was thinking about how life had a way of turning your dreams into punchlines, how the girl who once wanted to help people now spent her nights serving lukewarm eggs to strangers who never looked her in the eye. The bell above the door chimed. Sabrina looked up. A man entered, and somehow the entire atmosphere of the diner shifted. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", wearing a black wool coat that looked like it cost more than Sabrina made in 6 months. His shoes gleamed despite the rain, Italian leather that clicked purposefully against the floor. His hair was dark, touched with grey at the temples, slicked back in a style that spoke of old money and older traditions. But it was his eyes that caught Sabrina's attention, dark, calculating, the kind of eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. He moved to a corner booth, the one facing the door, the one where he could see everyone who came and went. Sabrina noticed things like that. When you worked enough late shifts in Newark, you learned to read people, to sense danger before it arrived. She approached with her notepad, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The man ordered black coffee and tiramisu. His voice was low, controlled, with the faintest trace of an accent. Italian, maybe Sicilian. He didn't look at the menu. He didn't look at her. His attention was fixed on his phone, his fingers moving across the screen with the precision of someone managing something far more important than late-night dessert orders. Sabrina brought the coffee. The man nodded once, a gesture so slight it was almost imperceptible. She returned to her work, conscious of his presence in the way you're conscious of a storm gathering on the horizon. 20 minutes passed. The man finished his tiramisu, left a crisp $100 bill on the table without asking for change, and walked out into the rain. The bell chimed again. The door closed. Silence returned. Sabrina approached the table to clear it, expecting the usual mess. Crumpled napkins, coffee stains, perhaps a few dollars in coins. Instead, there was only the $100 bill, the empty plate, and something else. A wallet, black leather, worn at the edges, but obviously expensive. It sat there like a test, like a question the universe was asking. Sabrina picked it up, feeling the weight of it in her hand. It was heavier than she expected. She opened it carefully, looking for identification, for a driver's license, for anything that would tell her who to call. There were no cards, no photos, no identification of any kind, just cash. More cash than Sabrina had seen in months. Hundreds and fifties, neatly arranged. She didn't count it, but she estimated at least $5,000, maybe more. and embossed in gold on the inside of the wallet was a symbol, a lion with a sword crossed behind it, surrounded by laurel leaves. It looked old, traditional, like something from another century, another world. Sabrina's hands trembled. She thought about her rent, about her mother, about the electricity bill that was 3 days from being shut off. $5,000 would solve everything. $5,000 would give her breathing room, time to figure things out, time to finally climb out of the hole she'd been living in since her father died. No one would know. The man was gone. He would assume he lost it somewhere else. He probably had so much money he wouldn't even miss it. She closed the wallet. She looked around the empty diner. Her manager, Frank, was in the back office, probably asleep at his desk as usual. The cook had gone home an hour ago. There were no customers, no witnesses, just Sabrina, and a choice that would define who she really was. She thought about her father. He'd been a construction worker, honest to a fault, the kind of man who returned extra change to cashiers and taught his daughter that character was what you did when no one was watching. He died with nothing, not even enough to cover his funeral expenses. His honesty had bought him exactly nothing, but he died with his dignity. Sabrina grabbed her jacket, shoved the wallet in her pocket, and ran out into the rain. The street was nearly empty, slick with water that reflected the neon signs and streetlights in wavering patterns of color. The cold hit her immediately, soaking through her thin uniform, plastering her hair to her face. She looked left, then right, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. There. Half a block down, moving toward a black SUV parked at the corner. The man. Sabrina ran. Her sneakers splashed through puddles, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wasn't thinking about what she was doing. She wasn't thinking about the wisdom of chasing down a stranger in Newark at midnight. She was only thinking about doing the right thing, about being the person her father raised her to be. "Sir, wait!" The man stopped. He turned slowly, one hand already moving inside his coat. His eyes found her in the darkness, and for a moment, Sabrina saw something flicker across his face, surprise perhaps, or calculation. Men appeared from nowhere, materializing out of the shadows like ghosts. 2, 3, 4 of them, all wearing dark suits, all moving toward her with purpose. Sabrina froze, suddenly aware of how stupid this was, how dangerous. But she'd come this far. She held out the wallet, water dripping from her trembling hand. You left this at the diner." The man stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Rain poured down between them, creating a curtain of water that made everything feel unreal, dreamlike. His bodyguards had formed a semicircle around them, their hands inside their jackets, their eyes scanning the street for threats. Slowly, the man walked toward her. Each step was measured, deliberate. He stopped inches away, close enough that Sabrina could smell his cologne. Expensive, woody, with hints of tobacco and leather. He looked down at the wallet in her hand, then up at her face, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. He took the wallet. His fingers brushed against hers for just a second, and Sabrina felt the coldness of his skin, the roughness of calluses that didn't belong on the hands of someone who wore $1,000 coats. He said nothing. Not thank you. Not a word. He simply looked at her, his dark eyes reading her like a book, seeing things she didn't even know were written there. Then he turned and walked to the SUV. The door opened. He climbed inside. The vehicle pulled away, its red taillights disappearing into the rain-soaked night. Sabrina stood there in the downpour, shivering, wondering what had just happened, wondering if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She walked back to the diner, her uniform soaked through, her teeth chattering. Frank was awake now, yelling at her for leaving without permission, threatening to dock her pay. She barely heard him. She finished her shift in a daze, mopped the floors, locked up at 2 in the morning, and walked the 6 blocks to her apartment through streets that smelled like garbage and rain. She climbed the stairs to her 3rd-floor walk-up, past Mrs. Chen's apartment, where the television always played too loud, past the broken window on the 2nd-floor landing that the landlord never fixed. She unlocked her door, stepped inside her tiny studio, and collapsed on her bed without even taking off her wet clothes. She'd done the right thing. Her father would have been proud, so why did she feel like she'd just stepped off a cliff? What happens next will change Sabrina's life forever. Will the mysterious man return? Subscribe to our channel to find out in Chapter 2. Sabrina woke to sunlight streaming through her apartment window and the sound of her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. Her uniform was still damp, clinging to her skin in uncomfortable patches. Her body ached from the cold, from exhaustion, from years of physical labor that ground you down one shift at a time. She reached for her phone. 12 missed calls from Frank, 6 text messages, each one more panicked than the last. "Where are you? You need to get here now. Sabrina, this is serious. Call me." She looked at the clock. 1:15 in the afternoon. She'd slept through her morning shift. Sabrina's heart sank. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She couldn't afford anything. She called Frank back, already forming apologies, already begging for another chance. Frank answered before the first ring finished. "Sabrina, get to the diner, now. Don't ask questions, just get here." The line went dead. Something in his voice made her stomach twist. Fear, maybe, or excitement, or something she couldn't identify. She changed quickly, pulling on jeans and a sweater, running a brush through her tangled hair. She looked at herself in the mirror, pale, exhausted, worried, and tried to summon whatever strength she had left. The walk to the diner felt longer than usual. The afternoon sun was bright but cold, the kind of winter light that illuminates everything without providing any warmth. Newark looked different in daylight, still rough, still tired, but somehow more honest about it. No shadows to hide in, no darkness to soften the hard edges. As she turned onto the street where Rosie's diner sat, Sabrina stopped dead. Black SUVs lined both sides of the street. 4 of them, maybe 5, all identical, all with tinted windows that reflected the world back at itself without revealing anything inside. Men in dark suits stood at strategic positions, near the diner entrance, at the corner, across the street. They weren't hiding, they weren't trying to blend in, they were making a statement. Sabrina's breath caught in her throat. Instinct told her to run. Common sense told her to turn around and never come back. But something stronger pulled her forward. Curiosity, maybe, or fate, or the simple fact that she had nowhere else to go. She approached the diner. One of the men stepped forward, blocking her path. He was massive, easily 6'4", with a neck like a tree trunk and hands that could crush bone. He looked down at her with eyes that showed no emotion whatsoever. "Sabrina Miles?" She nodded, unable to speak. "They're waiting for you inside." He stepped aside. The diner was empty, completely empty. Every table cleared, every customer gone. Frank stood behind the counter, his face pale, his hands shaking as he wiped down the same spot over and over. When he saw Sabrina, relief flooded his features. "Thank God," he whispered. "I didn't know what to think. They just showed up 2 hours ago, sent everyone home, said they were waiting for you. I thought maybe you'd done something. I thought, Frank, what's going on?" He shook his head. "I don't know, but whatever it is, be careful. These aren't people you mess with." Sabrina looked toward the corner booth. The booth where the man had sat last night. He was there again. The same man. The same black coat, now draped over the back of the seat. The same dark eyes, watching her with that unsettling intensity. But this time he wasn't alone. 3 other men sat nearby, all wearing expensive suits, all radiating the kind of quiet power that didn't need to announce itself. The man gestured to the seat across from him. An invitation, or perhaps a command. Sabrina walked over on legs that felt like water. She slid into the booth, her hands clasped together to stop them from shaking. Up close, in daylight, she could see more details. A scar along his jawline, thin and precise. Grey threaded through the dark hair at his temples, crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that suggested he was somewhere in his late 40s. Hands that bore the marks of violence. Scarred knuckles, a finger that had been broken and healed slightly crooked. "You ran after me last night," he said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. In the rain. At midnight, in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Newark. Sabrina found her voice. You forgot your wallet. Yes, I did. Silence stretched between them. Outside she could hear traffic, car horns, the normal sounds of the city continuing its day, oblivious to whatever was happening inside this diner. Do you know who I am? The man asked. No. My name is Alessio Romano. He said it like it should mean something, like the name itself carried weight. Sabrina shook her head. I'm sorry, I don't know that name. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Perhaps that's for the best. Tell me, Sabrina Miles, and yes, I know your name now, why did you return my wallet? Because it wasn't mine. There was $5,300 in that wallet. You make what, $30,000 a year? Less. $22,000 before taxes. So $5,000 would have been significant. Yes, and yet you gave it back. Sabrina met his eyes. It wasn't mine, she repeated. Alessio leaned back, studying her. Most people would have kept it. Most people would have convinced themselves they deserved it, that I wouldn't miss it, that the universe owed them something. But you ran into the rain. You chased me down. You returned what wasn't yours to keep. My father taught me to be honest. Your father is dead. The words hit Sabrina like a slap. She stared at him, anger flaring hot in her chest. How do you... I know everything about you now, Sabrina. I know your father died 3 years ago from a heart attack on a construction site. I know your mother lives in Philadelphia with stage 3 breast cancer. I know you're 2 weeks behind on rent. I know you started nursing school and dropped out because you couldn't afford it. I know you've been working at this diner for 4 years, always taking extra shifts, always trying to save money that somehow disappears before you can build anything with it. I know you're 26 years old and you feel like your life is over before it ever really began. Sabrina felt violated, exposed, like someone had ripped away every protective layer she'd built around herself. You have no right. I have every right, because you have something I need. I don't have anything. You have integrity. You have courage. You have the ability to do the right thing even when the wrong thing would be easier and more profitable. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Do you have any idea what that's worth? Sabrina shook her head, confused, frightened. What do you want from me? Alessio leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. I want you to work for me. The proposal has been made. But what could a mafia boss possibly want with an ordinary waitress? Subscribe to see what happens in Chapter 3. Sabrina laughed. She couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh, almost hysterical, echoing in the empty diner. It was the kind of laugh that comes when reality becomes so absurd that your brain can't process it any other way. You want me to... what? Be a waitress for the mob? Alessio didn't smile. I want you to manage one of my businesses. I want you to be the public face of a legitimate operation that needs someone people can trust, someone clean, someone honest. I don't understand. Let me explain something to you, Sabrina. I run a large organization. Some of what we do is legal. Much of it exists in grey areas, some of it is not legal at all, but all of it requires trust, requires people who can be relied upon. In my world, loyalty is bought with fear or money, but fear breeds resentment, money breeds greed. Neither creates genuine loyalty. What you showed me last night, that cannot be bought, that cannot be faked. Sabrina's mind raced. You're talking about the Mafia. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman who operates outside certain societal constraints, yes, but I'm also a man who keeps his word, who protects those under his care, who provides for entire communities that society has abandoned. Do you think the police protect these neighborhoods? Do you think the government cares about the people here? I provide jobs. I provide security. I provide structure in places where chaos would otherwise reign. That doesn't make it right. No. But it makes it necessary. Sabrina looked around the diner at Frank, who was pretending not to listen, at the men standing guard, at her own reflection in the window, tired, scared, trapped. Why me? You could have anyone. You could have people with experience, with education, with... I have plenty of people with experience. I have accountants and lawyers and managers. What I don't have is someone who would chase a stranger through the rain to return a wallet. Someone who would choose poverty over theft. Someone who still believes that doing the right thing matters, even when the world has given them every reason not to. I could go to the police, Sabrina said quietly. I could tell them who you are. Alessio smiled, and for the first time she saw genuine warmth in it. You could, but you won't, because you're not stupid. Because you know that going to the police wouldn't protect you, it would endanger you. Because you understand that sometimes the choice isn't between good and evil. Sometimes the choice is between surviving and drowning. He pulled a manila folder from beside him and slid it across the table. Sabrina opened it with trembling hands. Inside were documents, a job offer, a salary that made her current income look like pocket change. $80,000 a year, full benefits, medical insurance that would cover her mother's treatments, a signing bonus of $10,000, available immediately. You would manage a restaurant I own in Hoboken, legitimate business, fully legal, nothing questionable. You would handle the books, manage the staff, deal with suppliers, normal work, normal hours. The only difference is that you would work for me. And that means you would be protected. No one would touch you. No one would threaten you. You would be under my umbrella, under my care. And if I say no, Alessio's expression didn't change. Then you walk out that door, return to your life, and we never speak again. I won't threaten you. I won't harm you. You'll simply continue being Sabrina Miles. Waitress, struggling to survive, watching your mother die slowly because you can't afford better treatment, losing your apartment, losing your dreams, losing yourself one shift at a time until there's nothing left but regret. The words cut deep because they were true. Every single word was exactly what Sabrina feared, what kept her awake at night, what haunted her during those quiet moments when she allowed herself to think about the future. I need time to think, she whispered. You have until tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. Meet me at this address. He slid a business card across the table. It had a Hoboken address and nothing else. If you come, we move forward. If you don't, we never speak again. He stood, signaling his men with a subtle gesture. They began moving toward the door, a choreographed exit that spoke of years of practice. Alessio paused, looking down at Sabrina one last time. I know what your father would say. He would tell you to refuse. He would tell you that honest poverty is better than dishonest wealth. But Sabrina, your father is dead, and your honesty won't save your mother. It won't save you. Sometimes survival requires us to make compromises with the world as it is, not as we wish it would be. He left. The SUVs pulled away. The men in suits disappeared. Within 5 minutes, it was as if they had never been there at all. Frank approached cautiously, his face still pale. You okay? Sabrina stared at the business card, at the folder full of documents that promised salvation with a devil's bargain. I don't know. What did they want? They offered me a job. Jesus Christ, Sabrina, these people, you can't work for them. You know what they do, right? You know what they are? Yeah, I know. So you're going to say no, right? Sabrina looked at him. Frank was 53 years old. He'd been managing this diner for 20 years, living in the same studio apartment, driving the same dying car, one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. He was honest. He was hard-working. He was exactly what society said people should be, and he had nothing. I don't know, Sabrina repeated. She finished her shift in a daze, moving through the motions automatically. She served coffee and eggs and pie to customers who complained about everything and tipped poorly. She cleaned tables and refilled ketchup bottles and smiled until her face hurt. She did everything she'd been doing for 4 years, but now it all felt different. Now she saw it for what it was, a hamster wheel, movement without progress, effort without reward. At 2 in the morning, she walked home through the cold streets. She climbed the stairs past Mrs. Chen's apartment, past the broken window, into her tiny studio with its leaking ceiling and drafty windows and furniture from Goodwill. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. "Sabrina, honey, it's 2 in the morning. Are you okay?" "Mom, how are you feeling?" A pause. The kind of pause that said more than words could. "I'm okay, baby. The treatments they're helping. Don't worry about me." "Mom, tell me the truth. How much do the treatments cost?" "Sabrina, Mom, please." Another pause. "With insurance, about 3,000 a month. But don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. We always do. 3,000 a month, 36,000 a year. More than Sabrina made in total. Her mother was going bankrupt trying to stay alive, too proud to tell her daughter just how bad things really were. "Mum, what if I told you I got a job offer, a really good one? Good money, good benefits, benefits that would cover your treatments completely." She could hear the hope in her mother's voice, the desperate hope of someone who'd been drowning for so long. "Oh, Sabrina, that's wonderful. What kind of job?" "Restaurant management in Hoboken." "That's perfect for you. You'd be so good at that. When do you start?" Sabrina looked at the business card sitting on her desk, at the address that represented a door she could walk through, a life she could have, a choice that couldn't be undone. "I don't know yet, Mom. I have to decide by tomorrow." "What's there to decide? This sounds like an amazing opportunity." "It's complicated." "Honey, nothing worth having is simple. If this is a good opportunity, you take it. You take it and you don't look back. Life doesn't give us second chances very often. When they come, we have to be brave enough to grab them." They talked for a few more minutes. Her mother told her about the small apartment in Philadelphia, about the church ladies who brought casseroles, about the doctor who said the tumors were responding to treatment. She sounded tired but hopeful. She sounded like someone who was still fighting. After they hung up, Sabrina sat in the darkness for a long time. She thought about her father, about the lessons he'd taught her, about integrity and honesty and character. She thought about what he would say if he were here now. But he wasn't here. He was dead, and his honesty hadn't saved him. His integrity hadn't kept him alive. His principles had earned him exactly nothing except a cheap funeral that his family couldn't afford. Sabrina looked at the eviction notice on her door. She looked at the medical bills stacked on her desk. She looked at the hole in her sneaker that she'd been ignoring for 3 months because she couldn't afford new ones. She thought about Alessio Romano's words. Sometimes survival requires us to make compromises with the world as it is, not as we wish it would be. She picked up the business card. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. A choice that would define everything that came after. The question wasn't what was right anymore. The question was what was possible. And for the first time in years, something was possible beyond surviving until tomorrow. Sabrina faces an impossible decision. What will she choose? Subscribe to find out the stunning conclusion in Chapter 4. 9 o'clock in the morning found Sabrina standing outside an address in Hoboken, New Jersey, staring at what appeared to be an upscale Italian restaurant. Bella Vita, beautiful life. The irony wasn't lost on her. The restaurant was elegant in a way that felt both modern and traditional. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white tablecloths visible inside, a menu board showcasing handmade pasta and wood-fired pizza. Nothing about it screamed Mafia. Nothing about it suggested criminality. It looked like exactly what Alessio had promised, a legitimate business. Sabrina had barely slept. She'd spent the entire night wrestling with herself, with her conscience, with the ghost of her father, who seemed to hover in the corner of her apartment, watching her with disappointed eyes. She'd made lists of pros and cons. She'd prayed, even though she hadn't prayed since her father's funeral. She'd cried. And then at 6 in the morning, she'd made her decision. She pushed open the restaurant door. The interior was beautiful. Exposed brick walls, soft lighting, a bar made of reclaimed wood. The smell of fresh bread and garlic and basil filled the air. It was the kind of place Sabrina had walked past 1,000 times without ever imagining she could afford to eat there, let alone work there. Alessio sat at a table near the back, sipping espresso from a small white cup. He was reading a newspaper, an actual physical newspaper, the kind almost no one bothered with anymore. When he saw her, he folded it carefully and set it aside. "Sabrina, you came. I came. Please, sit." She sat. A man appeared immediately with another espresso, placed it in front of her, and vanished without a word. Sabrina wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to do with them. "Have you made your decision?" Sabrina nodded. "I have conditions." Alessio's eyebrows rose slightly. "Conditions? If I do this, if I work for you, I want things in writing. I want a contract that says exactly what I'll be doing, what's expected of me, what I won't be asked to do. I want assurance that I won't be involved in anything illegal. I want my mother's medical treatments covered immediately, and I want the ability to walk away if I decide this isn't right for me." For a long moment, Alessio said nothing. Then he smiled. It was a genuine smile, the kind that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. "You want to negotiate with me? You want guarantees? You want control over your own fate? Good. This is exactly why I chose you." He pulled out another folder, thicker than the first one. "Everything you asked for is already here. Contract specifying your duties. Restaurant management only, nothing beyond legitimate business operations. Medical insurance effective immediately, no pre-existing condition clauses. Covering your mother completely. Signing bonus of $10,000, wired to your account today. Salary of $80,000 a year. And a termination clause. You can leave with 30 days' notice, no penalty, no consequences." Sabrina stared at the documents. They were real, professional, notarized, everything he'd promised. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "What do you really want from me?" Alessio set down his espresso. "I told you, I want someone people can trust. But there's more to it than that. I've spent 30 years building an empire, Sabrina. I've made money, I've acquired power, I've done things I'm not proud of and things that were necessary. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it was like to believe in something, to have principles, to do the right thing because it's right, not because it's profitable." He leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "When I saw you run after me in the rain, when you handed me that wallet, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. I saw goodness, real goodness. Not the fake charity that rich people do for tax write-offs, not the performative kindness that comes with cameras and social media posts. Just genuine, honest decency, and I realized I wanted that in my world. I needed it." "You're trying to buy redemption," Sabrina said quietly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply tired of being surrounded by people who would sell their own mothers for the right price. Perhaps I want to prove that honor and success don't have to be mutually exclusive. Perhaps I'm just getting old and sentimental." He pushed the folder toward her. "But whatever my reasons, the offer stands. Sign these papers and your life changes today. Your mother gets treatment, your debts get paid, you get to run a beautiful restaurant and make a real difference. Or walk away and continue as you were." Sabrina looked at the documents. She thought about her father again, about what he would say. But then she thought about her mother, about the pain in her voice when they talked, about the treatments she needed and couldn't afford. She thought about the eviction notice, about the utility bills, about the hole in her shoe, and the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. She thought about what Alessio had said. Sometimes survival requires us to make compromises with the world as it is, not as we wish it would be. Maybe her father's way had been right for him. Maybe his integrity had been worth dying with. But Sabrina wasn't dead yet, and she had people depending on her. She picked up the pen. The next 3 months passed in a blur of activity that felt like living someone else's life. Sabrina signed the papers. The money appeared in her account within hours. She paid off her rent, her utility bills, her credit cards. She called her mother with the news about the insurance. She heard her mother cry with relief for the first time in years. The restaurant became her world. Bella Vita was thriving but disorganized, run by a competent but overwhelmed staff who were grateful to have real management. Sabrina threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised even her. She reorganized the inventory system. She renegotiated contracts with suppliers. She trained the staff, scheduled shifts, handled customer complaints, managed the books. It was honest work. Hard work, work she was good at, and it paid more in a month than she'd made in 6 months at the diner. Alessio visited occasionally, always during off hours, always accompanied by his silent bodyguards. He would sit at the same table, drink espresso, and discuss business with her, profits, expenses, staff issues. He never mentioned his other operations. He never asked her to do anything questionable. He kept his word, but Sabrina wasn't naive. She knew where the money came from. She knew what Alessio really was. Some nights she would lie awake wondering if accepting his offer had compromised something essential in herself, if she'd sold her soul for comfort and security. Other nights she would call her mother, hear the strength returning to her voice, hear about the treatments that were working, hear about the hope that had returned to her life. And on those nights, Sabrina slept soundly. 6 months after she started, Sabrina was closing the restaurant late one evening when Alessio arrived unexpectedly. No bodyguards this time. Just him, wearing a simple jacket, looking tired in a way she'd never seen before. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for the last 6 months, for proving that my instinct about you was correct. I'm just doing my job." "No, you're doing more than that. This restaurant's profits are up 30%, staff turnover is down, customer reviews are excellent. But more than that, you've brought something here that money can't buy. People respect this place now. They trust it. They trust you." He paused, looking around the restaurant with something like pride. "You know, my father started in a place like this. A small restaurant in Sicily. He was honest, worked hard, believed in doing things the right way. Then the war came. Then the poverty. Then the choices that weren't really choices. He built an empire because he had to, but he never forgot where he started. He never forgot what it meant to run a legitimate business with honor. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something. What I do, the other things, the things we don't discuss, that's the world I was born into. That's the legacy I inherited. But this restaurant, places like it, that's the world I wanted to build. That's the legacy I want to leave. And you're helping me do that." Sabrina felt something shift inside her. She'd spent months viewing herself as compromised, as someone who'd chosen comfort over principle. But maybe it was more complicated than that. Maybe morality wasn't black and white. Maybe doing good things for questionable people was still doing good things. "I'm not going to lie to you," she said. "I struggle with this, with knowing where the money comes from, with knowing what you do." "Good. Never stop struggling with it. The day you stop questioning, the day you become comfortable with it, that's the day you become like everyone else in my world. Stay clean, Sabrina. Stay honest. Be the person you were when you chased me down in the rain. That's all I ask." 1 year later, Sabrina stood in the restaurant she now managed completely, watching the evening dinner service in full swing. The place was packed, as it was every night. Local families celebrating birthdays, couples on dates, business people closing deals. All of them experiencing something beautiful, something real, something good. Her mother was in remission. The cancer was beaten, at least for now. She'd moved to New Jersey into a nice apartment near Sabrina, healthy enough to visit the restaurant weekly, proud enough to tell everyone that her daughter ran the place. Sabrina had paid off every debt. She'd moved into a real apartment with heat that worked and windows that closed properly. She'd bought new clothes that weren't from thrift stores. She'd even started taking night classes again, working toward finishing her degree, not because she needed it now, but because she wanted to prove to herself she could. Was she happy? That was complicated. She'd made a choice that her father wouldn't have approved of. She'd compromised principles she once thought were absolute. She worked for a man who did things she didn't want to know about. But she'd also saved her mother's life. She'd lifted herself out of poverty. She'd created something good and real and meaningful. She managed a restaurant that employed 30 people, that brought joy to hundreds of customers every week, that contributed something positive to the community. Maybe that's what growing up really meant. Not losing your ideals, but learning that ideals have to exist in the real world, with real consequences, with real people depending on you. Maybe integrity wasn't about purity. Maybe it was about doing the best you could with the choices you were given. Alessio still visited occasionally. They'd become something like friends, though Sabrina knew there were walls he would never let her past, parts of his life he would never share. He seemed older now, more tired, carrying burdens she could only imagine. One evening, during one of his visits, Sabrina asked him something she'd been wondering for months. That night, when you left your wallet, was it really an accident? Alessio smiled. What do you think? I think maybe you left it on purpose. I think maybe you were testing me. And if I was, then I'm glad I passed. So am I. He finished his espresso and stood to leave. At the door, he paused. Sabrina, I've known a lot of people in my life. Very few of them surprised me. Very few of them taught me anything, but you did. You reminded me that goodness still exists, that honor matters, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply be honest when dishonesty would be easier. I'm not sure I'm as good as you think I am. None of us are as good as we hope to be, but we try. That's what separates the humans from the monsters. He left. Sabrina watched through the window as he climbed into his SUV and disappeared into the night, back to whatever world he lived in when he wasn't here. She turned back to her restaurant now in every way that mattered. The kitchen was humming, the servers were smiling. The customers were laughing. Everything was working exactly as it should. Sabrina Miles had found a lost wallet and returned it. Hours later, a Mafia boss had arrived with a proposal, and she'd made a choice that changed everything. Was it the right choice? She still didn't know. Maybe she never would. But it was her choice, and she'd learned to live with that. Sometimes that's all any of us can do. Make our choices, live with the consequences, try to do more good than harm. Build something meaningful in whatever space we're given. The door opened. New customers entered, looking for a table, looking for a meal, looking for a moment of beauty in their complicated lives. Sabrina smiled. She grabbed menus. She moved forward. Because that's what survivors do. They move forward, and that's the end of Sabrina's story. A tale of impossible choices, moral complexity, and the price of survival. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more realistic, emotional narratives that explore the gray areas of human experience. Hit that like button, share with your friends, and let us know in the comments. What would you have done in Sabrina's position? Would you have taken the offer or walked away? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Tentar novamente, o Claude pode cometer erros. Confira sempre as respostas.